Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Agasicles Stamas from GearWorks.com and the E2KG network channel on YouTube here for another episode of It's Another Thing, our entertainment series podcast where we cover short season format television shows, such as those things on Netflix, and our topic of discussion tonight, the new series Cloak and Dagger on ABC's Freeform TV. Here with me, as always, I have Mr. Dave Pecci. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good. How are you, man?
Good. So episodes number 3 and 4, Stained Glass and Call Response. Why don't you go ahead and hit me with your general impressions of episodes, at least 3, while I get the social media out.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start with 4 because I saw 4 last night. I was really impressed with episode 4. I think that one will really hit off with you. Prior to our discussion from last episode, as well, I guess I'll say the more intense, but there was like some intense, like cultural conversations in episode 4. I feel like, which was really good, and also some very intense moments and more mystery in episode 4 and some suspense. Like, it's good when you have suspense, even though there wasn't action in there. Episode 3 was good because some of the visions were really good, and I liked how they really tied in 3 with episode 4. So I think it's really good that we're doing a podcast with these two, because it's like they're like one big episode. I honestly think, because it's very interesting how they both went, and because we got to see each of them got to learn about each other and through dreams, and then we're kind of seeing them talk about it in episode 4, and we see them like moving forward at episode 4, and I'm like, wow, this is really good. I really want to see more character development. I like where things are going. Really just pleased with this series so far. I honestly would rank it a little bit higher than The Gifted. I mean, I would say right now maybe Cloak and Dagger, Gifted, and then the Netflix is on there. Maybe Daredevil is number 3, and then, man, I can't remember where I rated my Netflix shows. I think I put like Punisher was like my number 3. Luke Cage was my number 2 for the Netflix. I put Defenders. I mean, I think Defenders I will put over Jessica Jones, at least for season 2. So yeah, I mean, for Gifted, I really want to see them stay different than the X-Men, but I'd like to see at least one Pravella X-Men cameo in there. As much as I'd like to see Cloak and Dagger eventually have, some reference to the greater MCU than just the Rock Song Corporation. Like, it would be interesting if they had some sort of reference to the Defenders and Cloak and Dagger. Like, that would be like, holy shit, that's amazing. Like, they say, maybe we should team up like the Defenders, or if they are like, hey, maybe like, I don't know, something like that would be amazing. What were your general thoughts?
So in general, I liked episode 3. Again, still, I struggle a wee bit through knowing what I know as far as what came before and what I'm looking for and what I'm expecting. So I still kind of hitch and struggle a little bit in each of those episodes. Let's quickly talk through what we got in episode 3, right? And I'm just going to go straight from Wikipedia. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, on episode number 5 of It's Another Thing, my Chromebook, where I had all my notes and talking points after my viewing of episode 3, ate itself. So we're going to lean on Wikipedia tonight, which normally I prefer to not do, but that's what we're going to do. So, again, we get introduced to O'Reilly. And I want to say in episode 3, is this the first time that we hear her speak?
Who speak?
Detective O'Reilly, sorry.
Maybe. I think you're right, because I think that's the episode where she confronts the mom and she's looking for Tandy and she arrests the kid. Yeah, because then because she runs away when the boyfriend gets arrested, and she's starting to just hide from the whole issue instead of face it.
Yeah, so this is one of my things where I talk about I get this bit of a hitch in what I know and what I expect and what I want and where they are. Tandy Bowen is a pretty horrible human being, right?
Oh yeah.
And I keep looking for the point where she is gonna, where the nose of the aircraft is gonna pull out of this nosedive that she's in, and we find something in her that's redeemable. I mean, and look, I know she got a bad, gig as a kid and all that, and there's tragedy and yada yada yada, but man, like when she just completely like ditched that dude who like,
it's yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty horrible. So we have Detective O'Reilly goes and talks to the rich kid who Tandy, tried to, she and her boyfriend, her partner at the time, stole from in the earlier two episodes, and she starts questioning him and reveals that it looks like somebody was attacked in the alley, and questions him about the fingernail marks on his face, and tells him that in police work they call those defensive marks. So she's clearly leading him down the path where she wants to know if he assaulted whoever stabbed him. So this is also the point where Tandy finally goes to her boyfriend, I guess Liam, and tells him about what happened that night. Is obviously in fear that she's gonna, that this is gonna come back to haunt her. She thinks that she may have killed this guy, and as we mentioned, it's so horrible that she leaves him on the lam because he kind of goes out of his way and does everything for her. So the cost of her getting, a new identity and yada 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 is going to be like $11,000, and he immediately props like $5,500, $6,000 of it, right? And I mean, a couple of criminals like them, that's not, that's probably everything that he has, and she at that point is able to offer, nothing, pretty much towards getting herself out of this problem financially. Again, Tyrone's obsession with catching the cop increases. He winds up staking the cop out and falling asleep, and then getting late to basketball practice. Now, his teammates' response to that, which is to kind of haul him off to the woodshed, so to speak. And
yeah, that was horrible. I was just like, ugh, jocks, I hate them.
Right. Very, very visceral scene, right? How have you felt overall about like the? I feel like the show doesn't shy away from that much in terms of what it renders on the screen, at least at the high school level, as far as how cruel.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that they're keeping it like real, and that it's kind of like very like like it's people are like that, and like it's really real, like things that are going on, especially with Tandy, right? Like honestly, to me it's just crazy, like knowing that Tandy is like, it's hard to say she's a runaway child, but she has a mom and she has a house, but she refuses to be a white suburban conforming girl because she lost her dad. So she's rebellious. She's trying to fill that void, obviously, by being with this current boyfriend. And then, in episode 4, it's the lawyer father figure. And, it's sad to see what these kids are going through. And it's very real. It's really a reflection of our world, right? Because there's a lot of like I work in childcare right now, and there's a lot of kids that are growing up without fathers, and the effect of that And also seeing the racial issues that are going on. It's very real, and it makes the superheroes feel more relatable to us, right? That's kind of why I feel this show is like that are going on, hitting it off very well.
Yeah, so this is also the first episode, and I definitely didn't get it. I unfortunately just put it together now, which is embarrassing to say because, again, I'm leaning on Wikipedia. So, the biggest problem with Cloak and Dagger's powers is, and I even felt this as a kid reading the comics, right, was nailing down exactly what their power sets are. They're definitely one of these where, there's kind of there's predominantly the plain Jack powers, right? Tandy can fire light beams from her hand that have, some level of weight to them. Again, on the show, they show them as physical manifestations. In the comic, they weren't really that. And then Cloak has basically a passageway to an inner dimension that is his body underneath the cloak. And exposure to that will typically renders anyone insane. But then there are all these little one-off, like, rarely shown powers that sometimes they don't even know that they have. And so, getting through that on the show is going to make that even more difficult. So one of the things that I guess they strung together, and I'll leap a bit ahead here to episode 4, is they, because I don't think you come around to it full circle until you get to episode 4, but when Cloak comes into contact with people, what he can see is their greatest fears. And when Tandy comes into skin-to-skin contact with people, what she can see is their greatest hopes. So there's a scene in episode 3 in Stained Glass where Cloak Ty comes into contact with his mother and sees a very horrifying dream, nightmare sequence in her mind of the older son Billy hearing something and running around the corner in a grocery store, and then her hearing a gunshot, and then young Tyrone looking at her, and then running around the corner also, and then hearing a gunshot as well, which is representative of her great fear of, having already lost Billy, that she is inevitably due to lose Ty as well. So also in this episode, Tandy returns home and finds out that her mother, Melissa Bowen, and I guess her boyfriend, Greg, have discovered her stash hidden in the drop ceiling tiles in the bathroom, and used the money to buy drugs to celebrate. So that's when she... that was the money she was going to use to put together with Liam's money to get out of town. So they decided at this point to pull off one last great big caper. So it was kind of cool in this episode that it was kind of a heist episode. And they were both talking about pulling this one last job. So they decided to boost a wedding. And so in the course of the wedding, that's when Tandy sees the hope sequence with Liam, seeing that his greatest hopes are, that he doesn't just see her as a criminal partner, but, but he actually is interested in spending the rest of her life with her, which for Tandy is a little too genuine, cuts a little too close to the jib. So for the rest of the time, we also get to see all this interaction of, Tandy kind of playing the either the maid of honor or I think it's the maid of honor. I think the whole thing was Liam gets tipped during the party, sidles up to the wedding planner who they thought was going to have the big bulk of cash, and finds out that there's been a little power struggle amongst the bridal party, and it's actually the maid of honor who has the big wad of cash to pay off like the band and the caterers and all that. I remember this clearly because it was my brother who had the big wad of cash to pay everyone off at the end of the night. So Tandy then encounters the maid of honor in the bathroom, recalls the name that Liam had given her, kind of plays her because I guess this lady is either a social worker or a psychology major or something, and offers counseling to Tandy. Tandy at that point takes some of the bridal programs or whatever, the wedding programs, and has torn them up into little shreds and stuffed them in the lady's purse, and that is enough to fool her into thinking she still has the money, and then they slip out at the end of the night. And I forget. I don't. How did they wind up getting separated? Do you remember?
I don't remember how they got separated. Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay, because I know. I guess maybe they both drove off in the car, but they drove off in the car to go back to the dry cleaners, which was where all of like the ID and her false papers and all that were. And I guess they split up. They deliberately split up at the dry cleaner. So she continues on in the Cadillac, which still has Just Married on it. And like the whole time I'm thinking like, this is not the inconspicuous vehicle that you try and make your getaway in.
Yeah, they took the bridal car. That was kind of funny. Like, wow, guys.
and I know they had to boost it leaving the wedding because they almost got busted. So they just took the first vehicle they had. It surprised me that she continued on in it. But as she's driving out of town, Liam gets nabbed, and I guess she is his one phone call, which again seems kind of weird for people who were trying to make a getaway. You probably wouldn't try to call the person who was still trying to get away. But he gets nicked. Liam then tells her that she is the only person that he has, so he has nobody who can come and front bail for him. Tandy just hangs up the phone and like leaves the guy swinging in the wind. Also, at the same point in time, Tyrone has taken his mother's gun and has gone to hunt down Connors and confront him, and has him dead to rights. But his power whisks him away just as he's pulling the trigger. He actually winds up teleporting directly in front of Tandy and her speeding a vehicle, with the gun going off as he's standing in front of the car, barely missing her. She winds up hitting the tree, and having a concussion. So, and unbelievably, I just read the synopsis of Season 2 Episode 2 Suicide Sprint's not stained glass, so I apologize for that. I guess that makes up for us not covering it in the last episode. So more quickly, Episode 3 then opens with them at the site of the crash. Tandy has the concussion. Ty goes, and Evita takes him to the voodoo priestess, who tells him all the ingredients he needs to make.
Which is her aunt,
her
right?
aunt,
yeah.
Right. To take the special bath so that he can walk in the land of the Loa. Tandy winds up also having her own vision quest because she has a concussion. There's a slight aside when Ty is visiting the voodoo priestess because she says, Ty says, is there some other way to do this other than taking a bath? Because he's trying to be cool. And the priestess mentions, well, the only other way is I can hit you in the head and give you a concussion, which of course is the state with Tandy.
Yeah, which is funny. Another ironic part is she's like, well, where do I get all this stuff? And she's like, oh, there's a one-stop place. And then you see them walking in with the Whole Foods bag. And I was watching that with my sister. We both chuckled because we tend to like joke about Whole Foods all the time.
Yeah. It was very nice little nod to commercialism and rooting the series in like modern day. So they both go through a series of surreal visions, which they then go on and explain in episode 4. But basically, Tyrone sees Tandy watching her father in a room surrounded by glass at a Roxxon Corporation board meeting with them. It's kind of like a scene straight out of like Hotel California, right? They're stabbing him and torturing him. He's strapped to the chair. He has things stuffed in his mouth that points his mouth is duct tape so he can't talk. And Tandy keeps running away, and Ty keeps telling her to stay and fight, and eventually she does stay. On the flip side, Ty appears at an old southern plantation with Connors, There's lots of weapons laid out for him on the table, but every time he picks one up, something go. I mean, he kills Connors, but then something goes wrong with Ty. Eventually, at one point, he's even he picks up a rope, I guess, because he's thinking he's going to hang Connors, but a mob actually shows up and winds up chasing him, and he winds up being hung.
Which kind of reminds you of like the KKK and like
right.
homages to all that.
Yeah, again, very graphically startling. They don't actually show him above the neck, but you do see his like feet swinging from a tree.
Yeah.
So we go through all this, and then we get to the end, and Tyrone shows up in the church because on his vision quest he saw visions of the church. The church is also part of the tour that Evita gives because her family like offers this like spooky downtown tour of New Orleans. And he shows up in Tandy's church where she hides out and says, we need to talk. So, anything else major from... I apologize that I spent a lot of our time talking about episode 2, because where I was looking on the screen wound up being episode 2 on the Wikipedia entry, not episode 3. But anything else?
I think we covered like pretty good amount of episode 3, and I think we can move on to episode 4 at this point.
Yep. Sorry, just trying to pull up my notes here on episode 4. So like I said, episode 4 starts off with them meeting in the church. This is a kind of neat little episode. At first, I wasn't sure exactly what the setup was going to be and what the structure for the episode was going to be, because it was interesting to me that Tyrone tells her what he saw, but then they cut camera, and you get the impression that she's not going to get the chance to tell Tyrone what she saw of him, and I thought it came off feeling like there was going to be this very like protective, like it was going to be about him trying to protect her and help her find her way, which I didn't necessarily want to see because Tyrone is just as much of a lost soul as she is.
Which, by the way, I'm sure you'll be happy. We actually got to see, one of the outfits. So I'm sure you were thrilled about that. Hopefully, like, he actually wears it, and it's not just, oh, there it is. Like, like we had the couple,
the Luke Cage one with the yellow shirt.
The Luke Cage and the Jessica Jones, here's the outfits, but we're not going to actually wear them,
Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I'm hoping it's not that. If he wears the cloak, again, it's just a cloak, so I hate to make a big deal out of it because it's not a full-blown costume. However, first time in all of the Marvel Universe stuff that I have seen, as far as I can tell, like a textbook accurate representation of the exact cloak that he wore in the comic book. Like, there's no deviation, there's no extra stuff. Particularly when he first picks it up, it looks exactly like the cloak from the comic. So, now the question will be, again, do they have him have that non-corporal body where he's just the cloak and a black shadow? We'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, I absolutely did get pumped up. Where I lose faith is now Dagger's costume was a straight up, very revealing 1980s costume with like a blank cleavage, like middle.
Like a go-go dancer, like
right.
Like tight spandex, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I seriously doubt that they're gonna let her wear that in the 21st century, but we'll see. I mean, it would be nice if there was some type of homage to it, and not just be like, something totally.
Yeah. Or at least something white, right? Because we started with her wearing the white ballerina suit.
Right. Yeah, and that would be decent. Like, I just have all the psychological scarring from, like, the whole X-Men thing of, like, not only can we not have them wear anything resembling their like, 80s second Genesis costumes, but we're just gonna have them all wear, like, black Spec Ops outfits, which, to me, was completely silly. But yeah, but like I said, Cloak's costume is is very revealing. So we'll see if what they're going to do for her. Um, then we have the scene with, Tyrone. I guess the one thing I didn't entirely like in this episode was the flashback and flash forward, right? And I know that was done deliberately for an artistic reason, and in the narrative it worked fine. But what I didn't like is I couldn't tell, as each of those scenes unfolded, I couldn't tell where they were, right? Meaning, so there's a scene actually right after this opening sequence where Ty...
Oh, it was. No, I was kind of confused too. Like, okay, are we in the past? Because, right, it kept going to them talking, and then it went to them, then it went to him with his dad, and then it went to her with the mom and the boyfriend, right? So I felt like it was very confusing if those scenes were in the past or if they were in the present.
Yeah, and the only thing that was relative was the conversation. I just wanted to know if those things were happening before they talked in the church or after. So at any rate, there's then a scene with Ty and his parents, and there's a big argument, and Ty's like, I've got stuff to do, I don't have time to eat breakfast, and this goes back and forth as he tries to, I guess clearly at some point, like, the whole scheme to tell the cops that his bike was stolen was after they talked in the church, right? Because that was Tandy's idea. And so I guess everything that unfolded with his dad thereafter was after that discussion. So he tries to, fake that his bike got stolen, and then he gets scared and runs out of the police station. He comes home. The dad asks him where his bolt cutters are, and he lies to him. The dad then grabs his backpack and finds the bolt cutters in there. That's never a good thing. But interestingly enough, the father's response to it is to then take him back to his old roots. Now, this is another thing where I got a little unhinged just because I don't know anything about New Orleans. I mean, I know a small amount about New Orleans culture. I have spent time down there, but I'm not deeply ingrained in that culture. And so, that scene where he went back and found, his old childhood friends, I don't know what they are. They mentioned that they're going to march, I guess, in the parade, which I guess is a Mardi Gras parade. The guy came at him with a straight razor blade. I don't know if this is a... And there were some very kind of, violent and criminally oriented, verbiage in the songs and stuff. But I don't know if that's, a gang, or, just a bunch of people who marched, or if that's, another voodoo... I have no idea what those people are, socially and culturally.
I thought, was this, was this some type of social movement? Type of march... I'm guessing by the outfit, it was some sort of Mardi Gras thing. Yeah, I'm I don't know. I'm as lost as you.
Right. I mean, again, not hugely pertinent to the story. It's still a fine scene. It's just, it got a little confusing. So the bigger story of this episode is the storyline between Tandy and Greg. So Tandy, I guess after the conversation in the church, comes back and talks to her mom. Tells her mom that, this guy is no good. He's just somebody that's after you for sex again. He's not really working the Roxanne case. Then she comes into contact with Greg and sees that his actual greatest hopes are to wind up with her and her mom. Greg, of course, is still married. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to... Well, I guess they're not going to paint that now. I'll come back around to that.
Yeah, I honestly, at that scene, I was like, okay, he's going to actually turn out to be some crook, and she's going to, knife him, or, oh no, they're probably going to kill him off in some horrible way and scar us.
Right. Yeah, and if we didn't mention, again, I will try and put it in print in the YouTube video, although I know lots of times people watch YouTube videos and don't bother reading the commentary below, but this is a spoiler show, so we are going to get in everything. But Greg is still married. That's kind of his only real mark that we know. He admits himself that he's not a perfect guy and he's done some things wrong, but he is on the up and up. He has actually been digging into the Roxanne case, which we find out.
Yeah, he's. I like him. I think he's honest and decent and and I felt sad when the mom, like, when they had that dinner conversation, and she's just all like, "No, just go, just go." I was like, "Wow."
Right. Yeah. So just as Tandy is getting to like this guy, they have a little dinner with all three of them there. Greg's wife calls. Tandy's mom gets jealous, and she actually, says she's going to bed. She's not hungry. She doesn't want to eat with them. And then Tandy says to Greg, well, let's just, Tandy, who has been working in the office with Greg, trying to help him do the research for the legal case against Roxanne, says, let's box this stuff up. We'll take it to the office. In the meantime, Melissa has apparently called Greg, Melissa, Tandy's mom, has apparently called Greg and broken up with him. So Greg is in the office. Tandy runs down there to see him. She arrives just in time to see him shot and killed.
Which was this was honestly the best last 10 minutes of the episode, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because it also shows like Tyrone's kind of resolution too. Both of them kind of have a resolution, She's like, I'm gonna go try to make things up with him and my mom, and then also, so she sees him get shot and killed, followed by the whole place is torched.
Right.
And the mom, and then she goes back, and the mom's crying. She's called the guy 6 times, and shoot, that's heartbreaking, right?
Right. Yeah, very tragic. So there's a couple things around this whole scene. Number one, I kind of clapped when it happened. Don't take it the wrong way. I clapped inside because I was like, what we've been commenting on, and what I've said is, I don't know who you wind up having for a villain for Cloak and Dagger. I can't really remember them ever having like a real arch nemesis in the comics. They were just a very weird duo in the Marvel universe, which never really seemed. I mean, I think editing-wise, I think they come off the Spider-Man desk, and they're affiliated with that subgroup at Marvel. But like it's hard to nail them down and fix them and give them like a full-blown character, like minus the very clear bend of their powers. These characters could very easily be Marvel's like Hawkman or Aquaman, right? They could very easily become these nondescript characters that nobody ever defines, and kind of meander through their existence. But they're not, simply because they at least can anchor themselves in that they're the light in the dark. But what I said was, I was like, oh, well, there's your damn villain right there, right? Is the Roxanne agent who kills Greg is a woman, and I'm like, well, so here we go, female assassin. If she's particularly skillful, and very what's the word I want to use? I want to say hateful, but if she has all the properties that make her easy to hate, then maybe that could be your villain. Or, if it's a kind of a group or supercell of those people in Roxanne, because one of the things Tandy mentions when she's working with Greg is that it seems like all these people who are responsible and who are trying to cover the paper trail, as far as what happened, are all kind of youngish, which I don't really quite understand, because the oil platform went down. Tandy was like 7, so like 9 years ago. But it seems like she says the primary suspects of the people they're going after are all fairly young. Because she goes, I wonder if any of these guys have Instagram accounts or Snapchat. She said, because boys love to show off their toys, when they have money and buy stuff. But it's feasible that maybe they were like mid-20s, late 20s when this happened, and they're like mid-30s now. So that was the one thing. I thought, great, maybe this is going to be their villain. But the second thing that occurred to me, and I guess I want to see it happen, because I guess it has to happen to move them forward and position them to plot-wise where I'm accustomed to seeing them. I feel like this is the tell that informs me that their parents are going to get killed.
Yeah, right? Because somehow they're going to try to, like, shut them down or cover them up, right? And they're going to lose their parents, which then makes them the runaways. Yeah, I kind of get that vibe too. Like something terrible's gonna happen, right? And then also, like, I also want to throw this in there, right? Tandy, thinks about committing suicide, right? And so the whole scene where she jumps in the ocean is just very impactful too, right? It just, and then seeing her pop out with her dagger, it's just like, okay, she's made that decision now to fight and not run anymore. And the same thing, like we see the next scene with Tyrone, it's like, all right, I'm going to go confront that cop. And he, this time, like, he's like, he looks the dude in the eye. Like, it's pretty intense. Sorry.
Yeah, but, well, so Tyrone is actually going to find Detective O'Reilly, who is the female detective.
Was that it? I thought he was there to actually confront that dirty cop again.
No, so the cop's name is Connor. The detective's name, the new female detective, the young detective, is O'Reilly. So it's also very interesting that it seems like all the cops have Irish or Scottish last names. So,
well, I still took it that he was going to go through O'Reilly to confront O'Connor, but maybe not the way that he planned, like killing the dude, right? Maybe he's going to actually take legal measures to take him down. And maybe he knows, like, O'Connor's, like, former partner or something.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking that he knows about O'Reilly because of what Tandy told him. And yeah, I don't know right now if he's going to talk to O'Reilly to dig up Tandy's case, or if it's to, like you said, work with her to take down Connor. What I could see, maybe particularly if the parents get killed, I can see the kids working with O'Reilly, and then your end flourishes, when O'Reilly's life is put in danger. That's when they both, come out in their costumes or whatever. I also wonder, like, so Tandy is the first one who kind of has the chutzpah to, like, force her powers to surface.
Yeah, right. She's actually catching on the controller powers more than Cloak knows right now. Because Cloak thought he's just like, oh, do I just go put something over my head and, like, right? Like, that's so silly. Like, we see him do that a couple times.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if Tandy is actually going to force him to surface his powers, right? If she's going to, like, expose him to light and force his dark powers to rise. So it kind of makes me wonder if what we're going to wind up seeing is that the parents, both their parents get killed. And, right, because the connection is that the mom is in politics, right? So, and I don't know if she's either in PR or she's a campaign manager or something, but clearly there's a very easy way to get her and them connected with Melissa and, trying to prosecute this case to take down Roxanne. So I'm wondering if it's the parents both get taken down and Tyrone kind of just crumbles, and it's Tandy, because she's, like you said, is manifesting and getting control of her powers. If it's her that kind of forces him to kind of latch onto his powers and bring them to the fore.
How would they, like, take down, like, somebody too? It's like, so he's got, like, teleportation, right? So, like, what could he do? Like, drop somebody off a building, like, she's the one that can use something to stab somebody, right? So I'm not sure, like, how that actually works.
No, I mean, in combat, in the comics, that's exactly the type of thing that would happen. So Cloak can, well, we'll see exactly how they're going to render it on TV. Cloak, well, I'm trying to figure out a good way to explain it. When he goes into his ethereal form, that darkness is very much like a gaseous form of octopus ink, right? He can spread it, he can control it, it can become tangible and suck people in. And so what would happen is, so first of all, they would both just appear right in the middle of, like, so if somebody was robbing a bank, because Cloak can teleport, they would just bamf, like I use the Nightcrawler term, right? They would just bamf and pop up in the middle of a group of bank robbers. and Tandy, because she has the light, she can travel inside his dark dimension without being affected. So
Okay.
he would just show up, open up the cloak, Tandy would pop out, right? Because when they're rendered in the comics, he's always like way taller than she is, so she actually like fits inside the cloak, um, and she would start spooling out daggers, and then he would just envelop people in the cloak and like hold them inside for like a few moments, and they would pop out, like their eyes would be completely like the whites of their eyes, their eyes would be completely dilated, and he would have driven them momentarily at least insane. But yeah, then combat tactics like enveloping someone and teleporting, and then ejecting them out of the cloak, off the third story of a building, was a typical thing, right? And then he would teleport and grab them, and eject them back down on the ground. So yeah, I don't know if they're going to be that proficient with their powers at this stage. We're just kind of have to see how it goes. So I guess one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and it's a scene that right now it didn't work that well for me. I'm still kind of struggling with it in my own head to come to terms with it. So there's the big confrontation point of their conversation in the church, right? There's the point where, everything is very nice and congenial between them for most of the time. If they're going to go a romantic direction with this, Tandy is clearly flirting with him at a couple points in time and giving him compliments on his appearance. But then things get shaky, and I guess mainly Ty blows up at her when she says that she's considered suicide, and she tries to walk it back and say, well, I didn't really mean I was thinking about taking my own life. I just meant, there are times that I wish that I had died, in the car accident, and Ty like blows up on her, and I guess this is an emotional overreaction from him because he's lost his brother, right? And he, having had somebody forcibly taken away from him, he doesn't ever want to hear about anybody voluntarily giving up their life.
Yeah, and then he also, I think this is the point too where he talks about, the difference between their lifestyle, and he's like, it's different being him because he's like, at every moment, like, he's like, people want to kill him, right? Or something could happen to him, that he's an African American, right? And he talks about that difficulty.
Yeah.
Where she doesn't have that.
Yeah, and I get it. There's just, look, there's a spectrum, right? When you bring up that topic, and I didn't really buy the line. Like he says a line in there, like, let me check your privilege, right? Like he's telling her, let me remind you how your life doesn't have the same difficulty as mine, and I get it, and he's not entirely wrong, but there's a spectrum, right? Telling somebody like a Paul Ryan, right, or a Donald Trump that you don't get it because you've lived with white privilege your whole life, that's a thing, right? Telling a middle-class, suburban, Caucasian who's oblivious to those differences that they need to recognize those differences and difficulties, that's a thing. He and Tandy's experience, I think is much closer, and I would also say that while yes, he suffers from some adversity, he also enjoys a large number of advantages that she doesn't enjoy, right? Maybe that she enjoyed in her early childhood, and believe me, again, from Tandy's perspective, I get it. Like, I traversed the path of, like, being relatively wealthy and well off, and then being in a family situation where then, I was with one parent and everything from a financial perspective was lost, and I went from 10,000 feet down to 1,000 feet and had to deal with a starkly different lifestyle. I just don't know that Tandy Bowen is the one that you come at with the line, let me check your privilege, right? Because it's not like she's enjoyed a ton of advantages and she doesn't get it. Like, I feel like I think she's close enough to the edge that you could have explained that in a non-volatile manner, and she would have gotten it, right? So it just felt like kind of like overtly manufactured drama, I think.
Right, because he goes to a private Catholic school. She's a school dropout, lives in a church by herself.
Right.
Stills with her boyfriend for a living, and sometimes goes over to her, her poor mom's house.
Right. I mean, living in squalor, like a thing that occurs to me, like with the way she's living, it's like, how does a person like that have clean clothes? Right? I mean, simple, basic things that we take for granted. She has no running water in the church. How does she maintain hygiene, brush her teeth, take a shower? Right? I mean, Ty has wireless Bose headphones, right? So I get it. I haven't gotten to a point where I'm just entirely dismissive of it as a scene that just didn't work. And last episode, I praised the writing staff for being in sync and like getting it and being woke and like clearly coming from backgrounds that are that give them an ability to see things through both Candy and Tyrone's eyes. But maybe where there's a little gap and a little space in the seams is where those two worlds converge. And I don't know. I didn't feel like that particularly came off the way I would have recommended. So I don't know, man. Anything else? Anything major? Anything good? Anything bad? Else that we didn't go through? You're still muted, Dave.
Yeah, that was about it for me, and I haven't been watching the trailer, surprisingly, so I don't know what's happening for each episode until I actually watch it. So I don't know. It's interesting, and it's kind of interesting to see, that they keep coming back to each other, but they still haven't figured out how to actually combine their powers too, right? Because you talk about how she can go into his cloak. Well, the first time they got near each other, their powers activated, but they repelled.
Right, and of course at this stage he doesn't even she's definitely ahead of him on the power curve as far as learning about manifesting powers. I don't think the manifestation of the cloud-oriented darkness, I don't think is a thing that he even gets. I think he's only consciously aware that he can teleport.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see exactly how they come through that, particularly with only 9 episodes left, right? Because it's only 13 episodes this season.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. Well, I think that's going to do it for us. So we will be back sometime next week. We got to work out exactly what date and time that's going to be. Actually, we won't be back next week, right? We're doing 2 episodes per show.
Yeah, I think so. That would make sense, right? Because I don't feel like one episode would, it's kind of be a waste of time.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. So we will be back after Cloak and Dagger episode 6 airs. So in 2 weeks' time. Back with another episode of It's Another Thing. That will be episode number 7. Thanks so much for joining in, whether you joined in on the live show, and if you did join in on the live show, I doggone sure did not keep an eye on the chat. But if you did join in, I apologize for not attending to you in the chat, but please leave a comment. We will definitely get back to it once the archive version is posted up on YouTube. Also, please go and check out the channel, E2KG Network, and check in on our other video game-oriented podcasts of Enough to Keep Going and E2KG in 30, which in a couple weeks will get rebranded to E2KG Deep Dive as we change the format of that show, expand it another 15 minutes, and allow it to be a little bit more of a discussion show than just the rapid-fire rundown and very quick 2-minute discussions that follow. So, thanks again on behalf of E2KG, Dave Pecci at ComicBook90 on Twitter, myself at Agasicles Stamas on Twitter, all one word, 2 S's in the middle. Please come back and join us for It's Another Thing, episode number 7. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here.